amazing students from Mayo sit up here and talk to you about the education opportunities here at Mayo Clinic. So there's the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine that really encompasses a lot of different programs. Today we have a representative from the Mayo Graduate School, the Mayo Medical School, the Mayo School of Health Sciences, as well as an MD-PhD candidate. So if you guys all want to come up here, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves, and then really I want this to be an open dialogue between all of you and these four up here to ask questions about their education paths, their backgrounds, and really their aspirations for the future. So I will turn it over to you guys, and we can start with some introductions.
Hey guys. I am the representative from Mayo Graduate School. My name is Carl. I am a fourth year in the Molecular Pharmacology and Experimental Therapeutics track. And I don't know what else I'm supposed to talk about. I work in one of the orthopedic oncology labs here, so I mostly do like molecular biology stuff in Wnt signaling.
Hey everybody, my name is Leah. I'm the representative from Mayo Medical School. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and I'm not sure what specialty I'm going to go into.
Hi, I'm Serena Wiles. I'm an MD-PhD student here. I did my 2 years in med school, and then I finished my PhD in Dr. Tim Nelson's lab in cardiac regeneration, and now I'm in my clinical year.
Hi, my name is Jordan.
You want to turn on the mic, I think.
Better?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, my name is Jordan. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse, and now I'm in the medical laboratory science program here. That's part of the Mayo School of Health Sciences.
I have a question for Leah. What was your undergraduate degree?
Sure. So I went to the University of Illinois, which was my home institution, and I graduated with a degree in biology and then in psychology.
Go ahead.
Serena? Yep. What was your research like before you entered into the program? Did you have publications? What was your research?
Yeah, good question. So I started getting into research in college, just like you guys, and I did cardiac research in college at a lab just during my summers. And after that, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do a PhD or an MD PhD or go to medical school. So I took some time off after college. I took 2 years and worked as a lab research assistant. So I found that experience very helpful. It clarified, what I liked about research, but also made me feel like the medical school aspect would give me more than just the basic science. So I really enjoyed that, and that's how I got to apply to the MD PhD program. So the MSTP program actually has 8 years dedicated to you to do the medical school and the PhD. So every student has 4 years for the medical school training, which is divided up as the first 2 years, which is the basic science, anatomy stuff that you learn, and then you go into PhD, and that's 4 years. So the PhD you can have up to 4 years, and even 5 and 6. I mean, people have gone to take as long as they need. But there was no, every student has a varying degree, range of time completion. There's no rush for you can do. After the first year of medical school, you do a lab rotation. Before starting medical school, you do a lab rotation. After finishing the second year of medical school, you do again a lab rotation. So you have 3 lab rotations under your belt, and by the time you start your PhD, you really have an idea of what is the different types of science that's going on, and if you need more time to figure that out, you have that support too. So I think most programs are supported in that sense, if you need that extra time.
So, as MD PhD in your clinical years, that's what you said? how would your clinical years look different than it would for someone else in not education?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So you're coming back after research track, so you've been out of the clinical realm for a couple of years, 2, 3 to 5 years even. So there is a little bit of like a learning curve for you. So they have a clinical integration program where the MD PhD students take a rapid 1-week intense course that kind of gives them an idea of everything that's going on in the clinic. You learn how to examine patients again, how to put the stethoscope on the right way and take notes and things like that. And then during your last year before you defend your thesis, they've started a new program now where every month you're in the clinic with a physician doing patient exams and going presentations, taking notes, things like that. So that like slowly starts to integrate you back in, and then you have that course. So those things are really helpful. Definitely, that's not the same as a second-year student that's coming fresh off of their step 1 exam and having been in the clinic very recently. So I think by the time you finish medical school, everyone kind of ends up evening out. But
This is kind of a question for everyone. So other than the obvious like research, the importance of research and undergrad, what other things have you guys do to benefit for yourself for your graduate, post-undergrad choices?
Sure. Obviously research is super important, and it's especially for what I'm doing as like you're going straight into PhD. Then like that's all you're going to be doing essentially is research. It's very heavily focused on that. But I did a lot of writing electives actually, so I took like both literature classes and writing intensive classes to supplement all like the other like random science classes that I was taking. Because in PhD land, you do a lot of writing. You're always writing papers, you have to write a thesis, you're writing up reports, you're helping other people write their papers. So I felt like that was a really important skill to have to be able to like communicate on paper really well.
So I'm just the straight MD track, and so research is important. And I was told all the time during undergrad that that was something that every school was looking for. What I would say is if research is important to you, then it will be important to the schools that you apply to, because you'll be able to speak about it passionately and intellectually, and that's important. But for me, I think what was way more important is that I did things I really enjoyed. So for me, that was a lot of community service, and those were the things that came up much more often in my interviews because I spoke about them much more passionately on my application. Than something like research, which was a very small piece of my application. So I know there can be a lot of pressure to check a lot of boxes before you apply to whatever program you're going to, but do remember that the things your interviewers will care about most are the things that you care about most also, and you'll place into the best program for you if you are honest with what makes a big difference for you.
I guess for me, the one thing I would say is just take classes that kind of offer some different, I guess some unique techniques that might set you apart from other people. Like, for example, I took a bacterial physiology class, and we got to work with a lot of radioactively labeled isotopes. It's things like that that set you apart from other people, I guess.
At what point in your academic career did you decide that you were going to go into your respective fields?
For me, originally when I went to lacrosse, I was a pre-med major, but my sophomore year I ended up changing to medical laboratory science just because I was unsure if I did want to pursue further schooling, and it's just nice to have a career field where you have a solid foundation so you can have a job when you get out. And then also with my position, I plan to work as a medical laboratory scientist and at the same time go for my master's degree in lab science management to hopefully try to seek a supervisor position.
So I applied to both PhD programs and MD PhD programs. I was always a little bit more interested in the research side of stuff. So I think for me, it was going on the interviews and seeing what the MD PhD programs had to offer and also the PhD programs And then finally getting the acceptance letter for the MD-PhD program is when I decided I'll do it.
Maybe my story isn't as well thought out as some others. I always thought I wanted to be a doctor, despite having very little understanding of what that actually meant. So I think I decided probably before high school that that was something I was going to pursue, mainly because I had a superficial understanding that you were supposed to like science and you were supposed to like helping people, and that made for a good physician. I think that that's a charming story, and I think for a lot of reasons it was helpful in my medical school application process, because I was able to say, like, there's nothing else for me, this is exactly what I want to do. I think it has been a detriment in actually pursuing medicine, because as I understand more about what being a doctor is, I understand that I didn't know enough when I made the decision. And so, not to say that it was the wrong choice for me, only to say that it's okay to be unsure and to think about a couple different things and a couple different ways to get there. You're not supposed to come from the womb knowing what you want to do, and so you don't have to tell that story. I think, if anything, you are better prepared if you have thought about what the pros and cons of each career would be and what would be the best fit for you, and that actually makes a much more compelling story than someone who says, I've known since I was born.
Yeah, I think I had the same kind of attitude as Leah going into college. When I was like in like high school, I had decided that I was, I'm gonna go like to med school and like go be a doctor, whatever. But I didn't really understand what that actually meant or what it would involve or what it looked like for me. So I didn't know like whether that was actually what I wanted to do, just like the concept of it. So I did. I got my in undergrad. I got my CNA certification. I worked as a CNA in some like I don't know, nursing home somewhere for a little while, and then I did a bunch of job shadowing where I was like following clinicians around in a bunch of different departments, and I really decided that like that's not like what I envisioned it being or what I wanted it to be. Like this isn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I did a research internship at Colorado State University, and I thought it was amazing. I was just like blew my mind, and decided that's what I wanted to do. So in junior year of college, I completely switched around like how I was directing my like courses and all this stuff, and really tried to start tailoring it towards graduate school, and here I am.
For MD-PhD, was it difficult after the second year to like see your classmates move on while you kind of like went back to the lab and did research, or how did you deal with that after?
Absolutely. It was, because especially the fourth year when your class matches. So when they all find out that they're going to their respective residencies and they're actually a full doctor and they're graduated. So that was probably the hardest part of the MD-PhD program, because these are people that you enter the same class as. But the good thing is you have your MD-PhDs friends that are also in the program that are, the class is pretty small at Mayo, it's about 6, so you know everybody pretty well, and you kind of stick together and get through that process. But and when you reintegrate back to third year, you're reintegrating with different students because people finish at different times. So as a MD-PhD community, it's pretty strong, and you kind of just have each other. But that process was for sure difficult. But then now it's like next year I'll be applying and matching, so it goes by pretty quickly.
For all of you, as far as like your career, that you're planning or anticipating after you finish school, what makes you the most excited about that given career path?
I think the most exciting thing about that is also what really is motivating me to be in science, and that's just having the opportunity to contribute to science, where you're contributing some like new information or new ideas, new concepts that hopefully will have a greater positive impact on either other researchers or how like people interact with the world and that kind of thing. So I think that's what I'm most excited about from like being in the PhD program, is just like being able to be involved in the research process right now, and also having those skills, like not only lab skills, but also critical thinking skills that will hopefully enable me to make a better contribution in the future.
I think for me, it's still the superficial stuff that brought me to medicine. So it's still that I really love science and I love being a learner. And I think no matter which way you approach it, the clinical way or from a research perspective, you're always going to be a learner in this profession. There are always going to be people who know more than you do that you can learn from, but then also a really awesome opportunity to teach, which I'm excited about too. And then helping people. I think there's so many ways you can do that, and whatever career all of you choose, you probably will make some really great contributions to individual lives. But I think if you're going to go into the research side of things, you have to be willing to sort of look at that in an abstract way. Like whatever I'm working on right now will eventually help people in the future. If you pursue a clinical route, then you're able to maybe see a little bit more tangibly on a day-to-day basis. Like I know that I can check off the list that I did something that was sort of helpful to that patient in particular.
So the MD PhD practice, if you go into academic medicine, is a little bit different than the traditional physician. So you have a lab and you're answering clinical-based questions. So I'm very excited about, even as a third-year medical student, I've seen a lot in the clinic that doesn't really have answers, or it's a lot of putting Band-Aids on things until we figure out what the actual root cause is. And you guys here are working on incredible questions and coming up with new ideas, and that's kind of the idea of being a physician scientist. When you're in the clinic, there's so many problems that don't have solutions, or our physicians are just giving them, oh, here's a drug that will take care of your symptoms, will take care of your headache, or will take care of your muscle pain, or whatever it is, but you're not solving the root cause of it. So I think I'm very excited to find the patient or the cause that inspires me to and have the training behind me to do the science and do the research to find solutions for patients.
I guess for me, at this point, I graduate in May, so for me it's just exciting to actually start working and getting a paycheck, of course, but besides that, just the career advancement opportunities. You're going to find opportunities here that you're not going to have at other medical institutions. For instance, in the field of lab science, you can specialize in education, quality control, or various other avenues of management. So I guess for me, it's just exciting knowing that I have all those opportunities. And even though I am graduating, there's still, I guess, room for me to determine what I would like to specialize in and what I'd really like to do for my career.
To build off of that, could you guys speak to, maybe you've already touched on this, the aspects of Mayo Clinic that are unique to your different fields and possibly why you chose Mayo over other options for you?
I guess I can start with that. For me, I chose Mayo just because of the fact that it's a reference laboratory, and I've just noticed this from being in the labs, that you see different cases here that you're not going to see at other places. So just the learning opportunities, there's a lot more here just because of the fact that it is such a large institution and we have so many outside clients.
So I'm originally from New York City, and I'd heard of the Mayo Clinic because it's world famous Mayo Clinic. So I applied here for the MD PhD program, and when I came out here for an interview, I had an experience that surpassed any other interview that I'd been on. It was incredible to see the way that people work together here. It was coming from the East Coast, how the research is done there compared to what happens at Mayo, which is really unique, which is you have direct access to patients, and people are really committed to addressing patient unmet needs. So it's very true, and I was also very motivated by my program director here, who had all of the interviewees over at her house and cooked dinner, and it showed to me that there's a faculty base, a mentor base that's very committed to all of the trainees here, and that was very important to me, so it helped my decision.
I was similarly struck on my interview day by just how magical this place is. You've been in the lobby, and I think that sort of sums it up. This is just an impressive place to be. But I think what stood out to me the most was this was a place where I felt like good medicine was practiced by good people. Everybody was so kind and so humble. And you go to a lot of other big academic institutions, and you are a speck in like amidst a really big crowd. And I felt like here, despite the fact I was like only a trainee or only an applicant to be a trainee, I was treated as if I was somebody who was really important to the future of medicine. And I haven't lost that sense of like wonder and commitment to this program and importance here. And I think that that really sets it apart from a lot of the other schools I was looking at.
I didn't really want to go to grad school in Minnesota because I grew up in Minnesota and I went to undergrad in Minnesota, and I'm from Duluth. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be cold, and I don't know, like I could go to like beaches or something. And so I kind of I can't think of the word. Anyways, didn't really wasn't super motivated to apply to Mayo, even though like I heard that it's like a great program and stuff. And I came here and interviewed, and was totally impressed with the institution. I felt like here compared to anywhere else, the graduate students were happy and they were very motivated. They were excited about the questions they were answering. Yeah.
I just graduated from Mayo grad school last spring, and for my interviews at other places, it was amazing how many unhappy grad students there were.
It's crazy.
And it blew my mind that, and that was, yeah, a unique part of Mayo for me too, is that people were actually happy to be here. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's the experience you're having.
I don't know, it seemed like everywhere I interviewed, you end up talking to a couple people, a couple of grad students that are just like, I hate my life. And you're like, you're in science, it's gotta be exciting, right? You gotta be excited about your stuff. And I felt like everybody here was really excited about the things that they got to be working on. They felt like it was an opportunity. It was this great chance to be doing research and be involved with Mayo Clinic. And also, like they talked about the fact that people are answering questions that are directly applicable to some clinical problem. You can very, very easily see the tie between the basic science research that they're doing and that big important question, that significant problem in the clinic that we need to address because people are dying out there, and we have to solve this problem. And you can easily see those ties, and I feel like that was something else that really stood out to me when I came here. So it was every question that we were researching and trying to answer was like that.
So maybe a little silly to ask graduate students about their free time, but I mean, like on a level of student life, like outside of like your lab bench or outside of like a medical classroom, what kind of other opportunities were you provided here?
What's free time? So like, I don't know, I play volleyball and tennis in my free time. I do like in the summer there's like tons of outdoor stuff to do, so like outside biking and hiking, whatever. There's free time to do fun things. It's all about what you're motivated to be doing. Like, what's a priority to you?
To build on that just a little bit, the cost of living in Rochester also enables a lot of fun things. Some other places that I had looked at, I felt like the graduate school stipend wouldn't have gone very far at all. But at Mayo, a lot of graduate students buy houses because you're here for 5 years, and it's I don't know, it's a good place to live for lifestyle as well.
Yeah, I think for me, college seemed like the most stressful thing I was ever going to be able to handle. And I imagine sometimes you feel like that too. You guys are really busy and you're working really hard. But the good thing is, as you move on in your academic career, your capacity to handle stress will increase at the same time your stress increases. So yes, medical school is harder than undergrad. I didn't believe it was possible, but it is. But you are also a more capable person once you get to medical school to handle that level of stress. And I think free time is somewhat limited, but it's all about what you choose to do with the time that you have. So I'm just very purposeful now about allowing myself a certain amount of time a day to turn off my computer and close all my books and just use that time for myself. And Sometimes it feels like you have to give yourself permission to do that, but never have I felt that I've done worse on an exam or done worse with a clinical interaction because I allowed myself to watch Netflix for an hour the night before. So I think it's just allowing yourself the freedom to do things for yourself, which is going to make you a better doctor in the future.
I had a question for your medical school application. Like, do you have any recommendations for us about how to make yourself a strong candidate?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to be as honest as possible. You will get asked things about every detail of your application. So for example, I thought it was appropriate to say that I was a basic Hebrew speaker because I went to a preschool where they spoke to us in Hebrew 20 years ago, and I actually got asked during my interview to speak in Hebrew, and I was like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. So be as honest as possible, know that every detail is important. And then my other advice would be to just have as many people as possible look at your application. So you're going to write a personal statement, write it slowly and purposefully, give yourself enough time to really think about it and think about what is the most important one page of information you can present about yourself. And then have people who like you read it, and then have people who don't like you read it, and then have people who don't know you read it. And all of those people will give you very different opinions. And I think that's important because on the committee, there will be some people who love you because they read your application and it rings true to them. There will be some people that dislike you because your experience is so disparate from theirs. And then there will be some people who just don't know you at all. And you want to be able to reach each of those people. So just take your time, be thoughtful, don't rush it, have lots of people look at it.
This kind of goes off the free time question, but compared to other people that kind of took different routes than you guys did, what things did you feel like you had to sacrifice that maybe other people didn't to do what you're doing, if that makes sense?
Money would be one of them for me. The other students who are in different tracks might speak a little bit differently to this, but medical school costs a lot of money. And so I have friends who were very successful in college and were able to get jobs right after graduation, and there are moments that I am briefly jealous of them because they are like purchasing homes and seem very settled in their lives, and I'm still a student and I still don't have a paycheck. And then I remember that they're not doing what I would want to be doing, and I don't feel that bad about it. But that's like the only thing I can think of that really sets this sort of career path apart from another, is just that you're in training for a lot longer. I don't know if other students feel different.
I think I have the same reaction. You do get paid in graduate school, and so like we don't pay tuition, and we get a stipend to live in Rochester and be doing research and such. But if I had, I double majored in undergrad in chemistry and biology, and if I had gone to like take a job in, I don't know, like research, running an HPLC for some person in a lab, I probably could be making a lot more money now, or if I had gone into biotech or something like this. Right now, I would be making a lot more money than I am currently making. So yes, like you are sacrificing some salary, but that is an investment in yourself. You have to see that as an investment in your future career that you really want to have.
Yeah, I think the question of sacrifice is a very important one, especially to all the women here who are considering doing an MD PhD program. When I initially was thinking about doing the program, it's a 7 to 8 year program where do I delay getting married, do I delay having children, and then after the program you're not done. You do residency after that. When does all of these things work out? And I really want to emphasize to all the women here, and the guys, but especially the women, to go after what you really are passionate about, and don't worry about how things will work out. They will work out. I met my husband here as a first-year medical student, and when I came to Minnesota, I said, I'm all about my career, I'm never getting married. And then, so things just happen, you can't plan everything. Just be open to that and be, trust in yourself and trust in the process, but just continue to do what you're very excited and passionate about.
I have a three-part question. But first, how many schools did you all apply to? Second is, so I'm gonna ask third part. How many non-traditional students are in programs with you that like married with children.
Oh, sure.
Like older in their late 20s, early 30s already.
Yeah, so in the MD PhD program, there's a student who has a 16-year-old daughter, and she kind of decided late in her career to have a change in career. And then in our medical school class, in my medical school class, I had a 40-year-old student who, medical student who was part of our class who was a graphic designer for 10 years and then had a change in his career. He had 2 kids, and his wife moved out here with him, and now he's matched into anesthesiology. They're living in Arizona. So, it's, I think you get a ton of different, ranges of people and experiences. So it's variable. And then your first question of the programs, so that I applied to 10 MD PhD programs and 5 PhD programs.
I applied to too many medical school programs. I think I applied to 17. Didn't finish all of those applications because that's a ridiculous undertaking and you only go to one school, so keep that in mind. I think in the end I probably finished applications for about 10. And then to address the second part of your question, the youngest medical student I know here at Mayo is 19. The oldest medical student I know is 42. So there is a vast variety of people here. And I think you'll see when you end up in whatever program you end up training in that there's no such thing anymore of the idea of traditional versus non-traditional, because everyone gets here a different way. And being straight out of college offers you some benefits, such as like being fresh with your scientific knowledge and that sort of thing. But having some life perspective offers a lot of benefits too, and everybody, like Serenia had said earlier, will end up at the same place by graduation.
You kind of spoke to it earlier. Can you, do you guys work outside of school, or what do you do for income?
I work a little bit outside of medical school, so I'm a tutor for the medical school, and so I probably work, I would say, less than 20 hours a month, but it's sort of just a supplemental income, just so I feel more comfortable shopping and that sort of thing. I think it would be challenging to have more of a job than that. I'm sure I have brilliant classmates who have done it, but I would not be able to handle more than like a part-time job.
So the MD PhD program, you receive a stipend and you don't have to pay medical school tuition. So you come out of that's one of the biggest incentives to do the program is you don't have any medical school debt when you finish, and then on top of that, every year you get the PhD stipend, which is I think $20, $30. So.
How hard is it to balance your schooling, whatever work if you're working, and a family?
Okay. So, yeah.
I would say my first thought was you should ask my significant other, not me, because I think he suffers more of the brunt of my inability to always balance those things. But if you have a good support system, maybe having a family then in some ways is even more of a benefit because you have people to come home to. So I would consider that and say it's probably more challenging because you have a lot more responsibilities too, but a lot more reward at the end of the day. So don't forget that you are a human, not just a student. And so you're still a daughter, a son, a father, a mother, a sister, a brother. You still have to be all of those things. That doesn't go on hold just because you're in medical school or graduate school. And you can't make the excuse all the time that you're busy. Sometimes you still have to talk to your mom on the phone, and that's a good thing. You'll usually feel better after.
When you guys were undergrads, did you ever get discouraged because of the path you chose, just because it's so competitive and everything?
All the time. Every day. Of course. Yeah. I think if I looked back at where I was at 4 years ago, I'd be shocked that I'm sitting on a panel. I think on a day-to-day basis, you question if you're good enough or if you belong in a graduate or medical program. I think that's totally normal. I think you always have to be able to answer for yourself, yes, I am good enough. Yes, I will make it. Yes, it will get better. Yes, it will get easier. You have to be able to remind yourself of that and give yourself some perspective. Often when I am very, very stressed about how much I have to learn, I think to myself, my God, somebody had to discover this before I could learn it. There is someone who is like way wiser and way brighter and way harder working than I am who allowed me to be here studying this material. And I think if you can put it like that, this isn't the hardest thing that's ever happened. And give yourself a little bit of life perspective that's helpful and important and will ground you a little bit. But yeah, I question it almost every day.
I also think it's important to realize that everybody else is asking themselves those questions too. They're like, oh my God, really? Like, do I belong here? Like, am I supposed to be doing this? I don't know. People ask themselves those questions all the time. It's like, everybody else is doing it too.
And I think it's important to just practice the mantra of fake it till you make it. You know, it's very true. Even in clinical year, you go in and you're like, yes, I'm ready, I'm here, and until they ask you the question and you give your best answer, and if you don't know, you say you don't know, you know? It's like you just have to take that role on and embrace it and give it whatever you got, so.
I think one of the most important things I learned in medical school is don't compare your insides to everybody else's outside. So it is really easy to look around and assume that nobody else is having trouble and you are the only one who ever feels incompetent or unworthy. Everybody else feels that too, they're just playing it off like they're not. And so, just like you know, they're looking at you and they think you look perfectly confident too. So, like Stormy said, a lot of it is just doing it and just knowing sometimes you're gonna be wrong and that that's okay. And then a lot of it is also reminding yourself that everybody else in the room has been wrong at some point too.
One of the crazy things about being in a PhD program or being in research is that you fail all the time. You do an experiment and it completely fails and the thing tanks, right? And you feel awful about stuff like that. You're like, man, you know, I had this like cool idea and cool concept and it's just like completely shredded. It's awful now. And I think that's a really important skill to have, to be able to fail and like pick yourself back up and be like, yeah, like, you know, I'm gonna go back out, try the experiment again, do all the other different conditions, optimize it, and we're gonna get it. And you have to realize that everybody else is doing that too. And even though, like, when you see other people's research, it's all pretty and nice, like on this big poster and stuff, and you're like, man, they must have never failed in their research because it looks so awesome, you know, that looks so pretty. But you realize that everybody else is failing also. Their experiments fail. They have bad hypotheses, things like that. They get bad reagents. I don't know, stuff like this happens all the time. That's it's a really important skill to have. It's something that I didn't learn in undergrad because you like, I don't know, you don't really like do experiments that, I don't know, like you don't like embark on risky projects and stuff that much in undergrad. And here it's like, it's all the time.
Time for one more question before we have to start the session B. Any last minute questions? We also have the information for all of these different programs in your folders. So hopefully that's a good reference.
I think there's one here.
I was wondering, in terms of medical school, how gender balanced do you think it is?
I think here at Mayo, it often errs on the side of a couple more women than men in each class. I think it's evened out overall.